Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which we are going to look specifically at the rules of golf. Now, you may well be aware that every few years, the R&A USGA release updates to the rules of golf to make sure they're keeping to modernize them, making sure that they're sort of as relevant as possible, addressing any issues there might be within the rules of golf. And that time is upon us again now. It seems the R&A, we received some communication from very recently to say that they were about to release some updates to the rules of golf. So effectively a new set of rules coming at the beginning of 2023. Now I'm joined in this video by Golf Monthly's rules guru. Jez, I hope you're okay with that moniker.
Yeah, you use it. I won't use it for myself, but you feel free to use it if you so desire.
Come on, Jez. You've been writing about the rules for you, and you're a qualified referee, I guess.
Guru in brackets, maybe. Yeah, an asterisk. Carry on.
And we're going to discuss what the changes are that they're bringing into play. So, as I say, these changes will come into play at the beginning of 2023. It's something that golfers should probably be aware about. But I think it's fair to say that this set of changes, the last time when the R&A USGA announced this, it was effective 1st of Jan 2019. And I think I'm right in saying that with that set of changes, they were pretty major, significant change to make the rules sort of to modernize them. But just this time, it's more of a slight evolution, a sort of a finessing of what they did last time. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. I think that set of changes came in 3 years rather than, it's normally a 4-year cycle, but they were keen to get that massive modernization program in as soon as possible. So the cycle broke a little then. And that one took the number of rules down from 34 to 24. And there are obviously loads of big changes that we're all familiar with now. This time, the rules are actually going up by one again for various reasons to 25, but the changes beyond that are much more few and far between.
They are, but they're worth knowing. And we will talk about what those rules changes are that are worth knowing. But before we do that, Jez, a couple of tweaks the R&A, or significant changes actually, the R&A and USGA are making to the rules this time. One of them around golfers with disabilities, because obviously golfers with disabilities require they require a unique set of rules to govern how they play the game. So how are the R&A changing the way in which they deal with this aspect?
Well, the rules that allowed players with certain disabilities to compete effectively on level playing field with golfers without disabilities was via local rules that had to be then specifically invoked to allow certain things that they're allowed to do, which you wouldn't be allowed to do. And an example would be a player who needs wheelchair or mobility assistance would be allowed 4 club lengths in which to drop rather than the 2 that you and I would have to drop within. So that's just one example. And there were 4 categories of disability plus a more general any other disability category. So there was quite a lengthy local rule to cover all these various players with visual impairment and players with other disabilities to allow them to play the game as fairly as possible.
Yeah, and it's that level playing field that you just mentioned there. That's one of the great things about golf, isn't it? The players of different abilities can compete with each other, against each other, because the handicap system allows you to create that level playing field. And I guess the R&A want to bring that into the main set of rules to make it the game as accessible as possible for everybody. Yeah,
so that we can all play in the same competitions without needing a local rule to be enforced to allow some players to compete on that level playing field.
And the other significant change that isn't actually a change to the rules, but the change in which they're going to go about their governing position is that this guy here, the rules of golf, this is the Players Edition booklet that many of you watching this will have seen. This has been in my golf bag for the last how many years. That explains why it's quite badly battered. But actually, this guy is going to become a thing of the past, Jez.
It is indeed. The Players Edition will no longer be printed. They're going to print 4 million fewer books this time, which is obviously good from a sustainability and environmental perspective. And those who want to look up a rule on the golf course to find out how to proceed are being very actively encouraged to download the Rules of Golf app and do it all through that. Now, that app's been downloaded apparently 800,000 times already, But I imagine that once the players edition has disappeared, then that will be running into several million fairly soon, I'm guessing.
Yes, and not everybody, let's face it, is going to have a copy of this in their golf bag, whereas most people will have their phone with them. So if there is something that you need to check while on the golf course, presumably you can do that. You can use the app to do it, and it should help.
Yeah, you'd be able to look up and see what the correct way to proceed in a certain scenario, what the penalty is, etc. And I think they're keen to point out that partly as a result of COVID, we've all become much more used to using technology out on the course for scoring or whatever. And this is just a good time to extend that move towards not harming as many trees in the making of the rules of golf.
Indeed, very good. So if you haven't already downloaded the R&A's Rules of Golf app, I suggest you do that. Do you know what, Jez? I don't think I have, so I will be doing that.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
As soon as we finish this call, I'll do that. Okay, so let's go through what the changes are to the rules. And there might, we were just discussing this, there might be a few sort of fairly minor tweaks elsewhere in the rules, but what we're going to discuss here are the sort of the four key ones that we think people probably should know. The first of which is about handicaps in usage in stroke play.
Yeah, well, it's more not necessarily about usage, but the fact that the player will no longer be responsible for marking the handicap on the scorecard. So that one, it's the committee's responsibility to now ensure that each player plays off the correct handicap. And I think the reasoning is that most scoring is now done through some computerized system. So the computerized system already knows what your handicap is before you tee off. So this kind of takes away the need for the player to be involved in making sure they play off the correct handicap, because the system knows what your handicap is before you tee off.
And I guess, Jez, for those of us, certainly in the UK, who've been playing under the WHS system for the last few years, our handicaps might fluctuate a bit more than they did previously under the old handicapping system. So maybe keeping track of exactly what your handicap is doing now possibly requires a little bit more attention, and therefore stuff can go wrong potentially. Is that fair? Or is that just conjecture?
I think that's probably fair. If you were, let's say you were off 6.5 before, you played off 7, and you knew that you would continue to play off 7 on an upward scale until you put 10 bad rounds in. Obviously, you come down.
Yeah.
But you would have to have 10 bad rounds before you moved up. Now, your handicap could be all over the place during those 10 rounds. So, there's, and certainly if you're an inconsistent golfer, so you've got, you play off 6, but you've got a load of 90s in there and the odd 72, then there could be some big swings depending on what's dropping off at what time.
Yes, I definitely suffer the curse of being an inconsistent golfer, so my handicap can swing quite wildly, I think. Okay, so the next, so you are not responsible for putting your handicap on the scorecard. That's down to the committee to make sure.
That is now a committee responsibility.
Fine.
Yeah, that's rule 3.3b brackets 4.
Okay. The next one is what happens when a golf club is damaged during the round. Now, I think I'm right in saying that this rule was changed for the last set of revisions, and now it's going to be changed again. Is that right?
That is correct. Last time it was changed so that you couldn't replace a club other than certain exceptional circumstances, but you could carry on using it regardless of how it was damaged. So even if you stamped on it after a bad shot or smacked it into a wall, you could carry on using it if it was still playable, even if you damaged it yourself. And now the rule is changing to allow you to replace a club during a round if it is damaged, but not if you damage it through abuse. Not if out in a fit of anger you've caused your golf club to break or something. Yeah. Or not. So break, you can now replace the club again. Right. But not if you've sustained injuries on it. And presumably, Jez, you can't unduly delay play here. Yeah, well, that's the thing. This is a change that, in most circumstances won't be of that much benefit to golfers. Especially if their course is not one where the ninth comes back to the clubhouse. But it does mean if the ninth does come back to the clubhouse and you've somehow broken your putter and you've got a spare one in the boot, you could nip back to the car or nip into the pro shop to borrow one for the other 9 holes, as long as you don't unduly delay play. And you can actually then replace the the damaged club, as long as you didn't do the damage.
Got it. Okay, good. Hopefully that's a rule that no one watching this is ever going to have to worry about. But in case you ever do, then hopefully that clears it up. Okay, so the next one is about what happens when a ball is at rest and then gets moved by natural forces.
Yeah.
I presume that most people watching this have played golf on incredibly windy days, which is probably the most likely natural force, where maybe a ball at rest has been moved by the wind. Just tell us what's changed about this rule and why they've changed it.
Well, I think one of the big catalysts for this change was what happened to Ricky Fowler in the Waste Management Open about 3 years ago. Many would have seen him take a drop out of a penalty area. I think you said he dropped and then dropped again and then placed.
I think he then ended up placing it because it was on a slow.
Yeah. So the ball was then at rest. He then wandered up to see what the shot was that he now faced. And after he'd come back to the ball, it then rolled back into the penalty area. And he was therefore penalised another shot to drop back out again. And a lot of people would have thought that was pretty unfair. And I think the rule makers have now come to the same decision. So now, if that happened, having dropped or placed or replaced the ball after the initial penalty, that is now like a stop point, if you like. And if the ball then is subsequently moved by natural forces, it wouldn't be a penalty to take it back out and replace it where it was. It's kind of eliminating that double penalty scenario.
Yeah, I guess it's just one of those that when you're watching it as an outsider, you think that just feels really quite unfair.
Yeah.
And dare I say it, I suspect people at the R&A USGA maybe watched that and thought the same thing and thought maybe just tweak this.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's important to stress that this is only if the ball is moved by natural forces into a different area of the course. So in that incident, it had moved from the general area into a penalty area.
Right, yes.
If it had just rolled further back down the bank and stayed in the general area, then he would have had to play it. He would, from 2023, he would still have to play it from where it had moved to. But it's only if it's moved into a different area of the course.
Yes, which on this instance it had. And I think this actually, the broader point here, it just goes to show that the ruling bodies in golf are constantly on the lookout for how they can improve things, make the rules fairer, make them a little bit simpler for people to understand. That's fair, isn't it, Jez?
That's fair, and indeed this also, if that scenario had happened near an out of bounds line, then if the ball had gone out of bounds, that would no longer apply from 2023. You would again get to replace it where it was, free of charge, if you like. Whereas at the time Ricky had his incident, if the ball had rolled out of bounds, then tough, I'm afraid you'd have had to take another penalty drop to get it back. It's a bit harsh. And equally on the if you're on a bank beside a putting green and it went the other way and the ball rolled down onto the putting green in your favour, formerly that would have been fine, just go ahead and now putt it. But now, because the putting green is a different area of the course, you would have to replace it back on that bank.
Interesting. Good clarification.
By natural forces,
Yeah, good, because the putting green is a different part of the golf course.
Different area of the golf course. Yeah.
Got it. Good clarification there, Jez. I like that. And then the last one that we're going to talk about on this is the procedure that you take if you're taking a drop and you're going back online. So there's go on, Jez, explain it.
Well, I mean, when you're taking relief from, say, a penalty area or an unplayable or something along those lines, you have the option to go back on the line. And you can go back as far as you like on that line, whether it's 20 yards or 150 yards. And I think that they just want to simplify the dropping procedure. So now you go back on that line, you drop the ball on that line, and as long as it comes to rest within a club length of where you drop it, that's fine, even if it goes nearer the hole. So you effectively, rather than an arc now, a reference arc, you now have a whole circle in which it could end up before you had to drop again.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, that, because there's for many people, there's a sort of natural sort of fear when you take a drop that the ball bounces towards the target, and you immediately in your mind sort of chalk that out, don't you? And you think, well, that's nearer the hole. But actually, because you've gone back on a line, you aren't actually near the hole, even if it bounces forward. Is that right?
No, because you could have decided to drop 50 yards closer to the hole anyway. So there's no perceived I don't know, advantage to be gained by going. In fact, you might be doing a disadvantage because you possibly drop back further to be able to then clear a tree or whatever it is in your way. So there's no need for you to have to re-drop for it going nearer the hole. So I guess in theory, it potentially speeds things up a bit because the likelihood of having to re-drop is reduced.
Very good. And now, just before our call, you spoke to the R&A's Director of Rules, Grant Moore.
Yes.
And talked to him about the changes they're making. I take it their feeling is that the rules that they introduced last time, the big adjustment to the rules, the major changes, have sort of, do they feel like they've gone fairly smoothly?
I mean, obviously there was a lot of initial resistance to things like dropping from knee height, and some people got a bit agitated about the reduction to 3 minutes for searching and so on. And there's obviously constant talk about putting with the flag in or not. But I think, certainly from my experience of playing, most of that's settled down. I don't really hear too many aggrieved golfers out there saying this is nonsense that you have to do it this way, or anyone. I'm sure there are many out there, but I haven't had the pleasure of playing with them of late. So I think they feel that it has gone well. It has simplified things in a lot of areas, but the rules still have to be pretty comprehensive to cover all the potential eventualities that might occur out on that vast expanse of grass and sand and water and trees and whatever.
That's it. As much as you might want to reduce the rule book to just one page, unfortunately, golf is there's just too many scenarios that you might encounter that require intervention from the rules to make sure that everyone's on a fair and even playing field, isn't it?
Yeah, I was having a conversation online earlier with one of our GM colleagues, and he was saying, I don't understand why the rules can't be simplified. And I said, well, for every time you think you've nailed it, there's always another, but what if? But what if this happens? What if that happens? And the rules have to cover all of those but what ifs.
Now, the last thing to say, Jez, is that these the new set of rules won't come into play until January the 1st, 2023. So what do people do until then? You
ignore everything we've just said until January the 1st, 2023, and carry on playing by the rules that you will find in the current Players Edition until midnight on the 31st of December. And then if you happen to be playing in a New Year's event on New Year's Day, there are those handful of mostly fairly subtle changes that you will have to just factor in.
So there you have it. That's our look at the revisions to the rules of golf that are coming in 2023. As I mentioned before, if you haven't already done so, it might be an idea to download the Rules of Golf app to make sure that you have everything that you need at your fingertips. Can be really helpful because that Players Edition is going to be a thing of the past. But that's it for now. If you have any questions or any comments about these rules changes, please do leave some comments below. We'd love to hear what you have to say. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.